Welcome to The Explainer. You know, taking the leap into building your very first saltwater reef tank, it is honestly one of the most rewarding things you can do. But if we want to get those vibrant colors and that robust growth right out of the gate, well, we need the right map. So today we're exploring the top 5 beginner-friendly corals to really set you up for success.
Okay, let's dive into this. Why do so many exciting new reef tanks end in early coral loss? It's a total heartbreak, and it's one we definitely want to avoid. The true villain of early reefing, it isn't bad luck. Actually, it's picking demanding species that just can't survive your new tank's wildly fluctuating environment. It's so tempting, right? You go to the local shop, you spot the most exotic, sensitive piece of coral, and you just have to bring it home. But dropping a delicate species into a brand new, unstable ecosystem, that's just a recipe for disaster. So our goal today is to outsmart that villain entirely by focusing on the right starting lineup.
To really understand why those delicate corals fail, we've got to talk about first tank swings. When your tank is brand new, it is a highly volatile, challenging environment. It's still cycling. The biology is just starting to take hold, and all those chemical parameters, they're desperately trying to find their baseline stability. It is basically an invisible roller coaster. Because of these dramatic fluctuations, your strategy absolutely must be to choose hardy, forgiving hero corals. You need species tough enough to ride out these swings without losing their color or their overall health.
And that brings us perfectly to our solution, the hardy foundation corals. These resilient species are your ultimate confidence builders. They offer incredible forgiveness while you're still learning the ropes, all without sacrificing the amazing color and growth you want to see in your display. Let's meet our very first hero.
Number 1 on our list, and I'd argue the undisputed champions of beginner reefing, Zoanthids, or as most of us just call them, zoas. These are the ultimate beginner-friendly foundational corals. They're incredibly hardy, they come in this absolutely mesmerizing array of bright colors, and the best part? They respond beautifully to proper placement in your tank. Give them exactly what they want, and they are going to reward you super quickly.
So for true zoa success in your tank, take a look at your rockwork and aim for the middle. You want to deliberately avoid the absolute brightest spots right under your lights. Set them securely on a nice, stable rock where they won't tumble down. Now for water movement, you just want to provide a consistent, gentle flow right across the colony. Nothing blasting them. Think of it like a nice, steady breeze. Definitely avoid any sudden lighting changes, which can totally shock them. And here's your best visual cue to know you're winning. Watch for extended polyps. When those little polyps open up and extend outward, they are literally telling you, hey, I like it here, I'm adjusted, and I'm ready to grow.
Moving right along to our second group, we've got mushroom corals, specifically the Discosoma varieties. These are fantastic soft corals. They add a totally different texture to your tank, bringing in these broad splashes of color and a distinctly low-stress vibe. What makes them such a home run for a first tank is that once they are firmly attached to a rock, they can handle a remarkably wide range of conditions compared to those more demanding species.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the unique physical danger we have to watch out for. Because these guys are soft, if they don't have stable placement or if a strong current is just blasting them, they can actually detach and start blowing all around your tank. And if you have them down near the substrate and they get knocked loose, man, they can get sucked right into your power heads, which is exactly what we don't want. So the big takeaway here is gentle flow and ensuring they're securely settled so they can safely establish their footing.
Coming in at number 3, we have standard star polyps. These are another massive foundational favorite in the hobby, and for very good reason. They are completely renowned for their incredible hardiness and their ability to really thrive with relatively simple care. Plus, they give your tank this wonderful waving texture. It almost looks like an underwater meadow swaying in the breeze, which brings so much dynamic movement to the reef.
Setting them up for success is super manageable. They generally prefer moderate to bright light and a consistent, gentle flow. That flow is key because it keeps their surfaces clear of detritus. The real strategy here, though, is acclimation. You want to start them with lower placement in your tank. If you know your setup runs strong lighting, just take your time, be patient, and acclimate them upwards slowly over a period of weeks. You're just easing them into their new home. Just keep a close eye on their growth patterns, because these colonies will definitely start to spread once they get comfortable.
Now, there is a pretty stark contrast between our previous corals and the next ones. On one hand, you have the steady, low-stress, stay-put nature of mushroom corals. They attach, they chill out, and they are zero drama. But on the other hand, you have aggressive, rapid spreaders. Understanding this behavioral difference is absolutely key to how you map out the real estate on your rockwork.
And that brings us to number 4, Green Star Polyps,
widely known in the hobby as GSP. These are absolutely stunning. They look like a waving field of neon green grass. They're incredibly tough, super resilient, and famously fast colonizers. But remember, just because they're hardy doesn't mean they don't have needs. To get that vibrant, glowing color, they still absolutely demand good water quality and appropriate lighting.
Okay, I have to give you a very direct warning right here. Green Star Polyps will completely overtake their neighboring corals if you do not actively contain them. Seriously, think of them almost like a beautiful neon weed trying to take over a garden. There are two non-negotiable steps here. Step 1, place them on isolated, stable rock cuts or frag plugs. You're essentially creating a little island in your tank where they literally cannot crawl over to your main rockwork. Step 2, as they grow, you will need to frag, or physically cut, the colony back to control its spread. Keep them on their own island, and they'll be a stunning, manageable centerpiece. But if you let them loose on your main rocks, well, they're going to become the only coral you own.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Our fifth and final beginner-friendly coral brings a totally different dynamic: the candy cane coral. This is a really solid step up for beginners who are ready to introduce that striking, classic reef look into their display. With their beautiful, fleshy tentacles, they represent a major transition from the soft, encrusting corals into something with a much more rigid, distinct skeletal structure.
Here is exactly what your candy canes are going to require. First, they need a slightly more established tank. You'll want to provide moderate indirect light and good indirect flow. Again, absolutely no direct blasting with either light or current. Interestingly enough, immediate feeding is usually not required right when you put them in. However, they specifically demand stable alkalinity. And that specific requirement, it perfectly transitions us into the ultimate secret weapon for your entire tank, regardless of which of these 5 corals you end up choosing. Because here is the absolute truth of the hobby. Even our 5 incredibly forgiving hero corals will struggle and potentially fail if your tank is still rapidly cycling. The ultimate secret to long-term success isn't some magic chemical or a fancy, expensive piece of equipment. It is simply tank stability. Your overarching goal as a new reef keeper is to get your water parameters steady and just keep them there. So there are 5 pillars of water chemistry you need to master, and there's a clear rhythm to success here. Consistent levels for salinity and temperature, stable levels for alkalinity to prevent those dangerous swings, and a balanced equilibrium for calcium and nutrients. Consistent, stable, balanced. Focus your energy right there rather than constantly chasing perfect theoretical numbers, and I promise you, your corals will thrive.
I want to leave you with a thought from our source material today that sums us all up beautifully. Consider starting with 1 or 2 corals first, then adding more once your readings are steady over time. That slower pace often produces better color, faster growth, and fewer early setbacks. Patience really is your absolute superpower in this hobby. Taking it slow is the true secret to building a magnificent reef. So the big question is, are you ready to master the invisible roller coaster of a new tank, or will you let impatience rush your reef? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time as we continue to decode the hobby.